Built his team, the new wave included university graduates Steve Highway and Brian Hall, now the club's community officer.
When you've got 55,000 people in the stadium, and back in those days, the 60s and the 70s, the noise was incredible. It was literally impossible to switch off from it. It got to you, and it did lift you, and it did raise you. In fact, standing in the centre of the pitch, we couldn't carry out a conversation between ourselves. Even if we shouted at one another, there was that much din going on.
The intimidating Anfield sign that stands over the tunnel as the teams run out often frightened the opposition.
I think there was two elements that came into play there. There's no two ways about it, that in those days the opposition were terrified to come and play here. I can't quite remember the statistic, but it's something like 60 odd 70 consecutive home games without defeat. I mean, that's staggering, isn't it? So, I mean, already there's an inbuilt fear because of that. But then on top of that, the players having to go out and play against 11 red shirts that probably sometimes seem like 22 red shirts, they had to contend with this enormous noise that was going on, you know. And when you've got like 26,000 people on the Kop and they're all singing in unison and they're all chanting in unison, it must have been terrifying. In fact, I can remember one Ipswich player actually saying to me 10 minutes into the second half of a game, he hated playing here. And just at that moment, they subbed him. That was the quickest he moved all afternoon to get off the pitch. He was made up.
Never had the Kop played a bigger part in a Merseyside derby than in November 1970, when a polished Everton side came to Anfield as champions and took a 2-goal lead.
Tommy Smith's really wriggling to get himself out of trouble there. And Whittle, yes, he's got it. Morrissey. And a good return pass, he's onside. Royal unmarked to the back, here he comes. Good goal! Tommy Smith to Highway. And he's over Hurst's tackle. Man in the middle, and he scored! What a goal! Steve Highway! Hughes to take the throw. And Highway's off again. And a useful cross. Joshua! And there's the opposition at the other end. Somewhat silent now. And the Kop in contrast. From 2-0 down to 2-all, and they've something to sing about. What a sight and sound that is. Hughes. Highway in the thick of that. This time last year he was playing amateur football. This is Lindsay. And here's Lawler coming round. Goal!
And Stevie Highway scored, you know, it's 2-1, and it was buzzing then, it was going, you know, the crowd were going crackers, and then Toshi scored the second to make it 2-2, and with 5 minutes to go, Silent Night Chris Lawler sneaked on the blind side into the penalty area and scored the winner for us with 5 minutes to go. Well, the place went berserk, it was phenomenal. You couldn't ignore that noise. No matter how professional you were, you had to be carried away by all of that. And afterwards, after the game, and I was sort of driving home and thinking about it, I realised what a fantastic experience it was to be a part of all that emotion and all that fervour for football. And then to realise that I was actually in the centre of that as a player, and all this noise was for me and my teammates. It's an experience that I will never, ever forget.
Neither will Phil Thompson, who fulfilled the dream of every Kopite and came out of the crowd to play for Liverpool.
the great thing happened to me was that I was able to graduate from the Cop to go onto the pitch and be able to do my stuff. And believe me, it was a lot easier on the pitch than being up here, because at least down there you could do something about it. But that feeling of basically being admired by the people on the Cop was a magnificent feeling.
Now, you had a little routine when you came out, didn't you, as an established player?
Yeah, I did. Exactly where I'm standing here was where Owen and myself used to stand week in, week out. Me trying to keep off burly bouncers and dockers and everything, trying to keep this place right in front of this bar, saving a spot for my brother who was working at the time. So I always remembered where he stood. Actually, these crossbars have changed over the years, and it was actually just in front of the pillar behind you. And I used to stand there, and I used to keep this place. So when I came out onto the pitch, everybody used to have the names sang and everything. It was great. I was thrilled and shouting Phil Thompson. But I used to save a special wave for my brother Owen. I knew where he stood, and then just at the time when it was all quiet, and I used to look up and I used to give him a wave. He'd wave back. And the lads used to say to me, "How the hell can you see your brother? You know, he's in amongst 26,000 people." I said, "Hey," I said, "I know where I stood." I said, "My brother, I could look straight up and pick him out." I think any supporters throughout the country who stood on their own terrace would know where they stood and if the brothers were there.
The young Thompson was part of the Liverpool team that won the third championship under Shankly in 1973. They beat Leeds to secure the title. Peter Cormack scored the first goal in front of the Cop. And then Kevin Keegan, who the Copites had adopted as one of their own from the moment he made his Liverpool debut in 1971, took advantage of an error by David Harvey and made it 2-0.
Liverpool v Leeds for the championship back in 72-73. A memorable day for me. Thinking about it, I was only 19. Bill Shankly had picked me ahead of Brian Hall at the time, which I was just an up-and-coming lad, and I'd played quite well the week before, and I was in the side, and I'd like to think I was in on merit. Shanks had picked me, and I thought to myself, oh, marvellous, great occasion. We stayed in the hotel overnight. I remember coming to the game, coming along Anfield Road, and the nerves were, butterflies were going, and I can remember, you could say, to settle myself down, I started singing to myself on the coach, sitting there alongside of the window, and I started singing "You Never Walk Alone." It sounds daft and everything, I don't often relate it, but the passion was burning so much inside me, and it was, I was nearly crying, and I'm looking out and I'm thinking, all those people, they're all looking at me here, and I was singing it, and I got a great buzz. It gave me great belief to go into the game. And as it happened, we played magnificent on the day. I was burning with desire, with pride. And during the game, it was all going well for us. We won the game 2-0, which was magnificent. But on that day, I can remember, I went through a tackle with Alan Clark, and I really did. Blocked tackle, I just went right through him, carried on. Good move, probably the only time I did. But I can remember the Cop, this is mid-game. They broke out in song and started shouting my name. And God, you know, usually a lot of the time you don't hear things or anything when you're playing, but I heard that, and believe me, that was the first time as though I felt I belonged. And they did. They were all shouting my name. I was buzzing. I had a fabulous game, and I was so pleased to be part of that team at that time. 19, I was very, very impressionable age.
For Shankly and Liverpool, that was a memorable season. Not only did they lift the championship trophy, but they also won the UEFA Cup, Liverpool's first European success and a sign of things to come. The 70s march had started. The following year, 1974, it was the FA Cup again, under the captaincy of Emlyn Hughes. The Cop did not know it then, but this would mark the end of Bill Shankly's reign at Anfield. He retired in the summer of 1974 after nearly 15 years at the helm. Shankly's stories come thick and fast, but the best ones are the simple ones.
Well, I can remember Shanks once saying in public, "You are the people." And I'm thinking, yeah, yes, they are, Bill. Yeah, you're right. But these very simple statements that Shanks was brilliant at, this communication he had with large numbers of people. He's the most powerful man I've ever met in my life. The most powerful in the sense that he could communicate so sympathetically with such large numbers of people. I think he understood Liverpudlians, and I think he understood football people, and there was a tremendous empathy between him and those supporters. And his communication skills were the best I've ever seen, not just in words, but also in his mannerisms and the way that he conducted himself in front of people. He was a part of the Kop, and he was a part of Liverpool supporters. Arguably, Liverpool's greatest supporter, because that's what he was, apart from anything else.
At the Kop end, in the net, behind the goals, there's a casket, a foot down. And it was a frosty day, and the groundsman took half an hour to dig the hole. But the casket is there, the man's ashes. They didn't put the ashes on it. The whole casket's in below. And all the rest of the ground around the Kop end's all sprayed with ashes. So the place is it's a shrine, really.
Bill Shankly's enthusiasm was infectious. Local entertainers like Stan Kelly focused on him, not just to brighten up their act in the clubs, but because they were supporters themselves, who stood on the Kop and knew the feeling of belonging to that special army of supporters.
Well, welcome to the Spine Kop at Anfield. This is sometimes called the Mecca of soccer. And I'm rather glad you could come, because I hate singing on my own. In fact, every week, thousands of Kopites assemble here to perform a very strange ritual. The very word Kopite sounds religious, and this is probably the nearest analogy you can put to the goings-on here. We have our dogma, we have our shrine, and this is the shrine, in fact. We have our hymns of praise, and they're sung here every Saturday. And when they die, they have their beliefs of life after death, and they ask the club, can their ashes be scattered here on the Kop to give them immortality like the club itself? My favourite one is when we were 3-0 up against Wrexham in a cup tie, and a lad behind me shouted, "Don't score any more, for God's sake, or they'll cut our water off." And this is all part of the myth that Wales has a big tap somewhere that supplies Liverpool with water. On other occasions, when the ball is kicked out of play, you'll hear the cry, "Forget the ball, get on with the game." I think there are various centres of creativity, and the ripples spread so quickly because everyone is in tune with these small centres.
Bob Paisley knew what he meant. He'd been at Anfield since 1939. When he took over from Shankly as manager, Liverpool again reached the final of the UEFA Cup.
Over the heads of the defenders, and Lambert chasing and scoring! Basteins. Lambert, turned by Lekens to De Kubber. De Kubber gets it back from Koos. Lambert, Koos, 2-0! Bastein scored a little bit out of position by Keegan. Highway. Bringing in Kennedy. Great goal! Keegan turning brilliantly. Kennedy again. And Case. 2-2. Smith. Not away by De Kubber. Highway. Going past Basteins. Penalty. And Keegan comes up now and sends it the wrong way. Three in 5 minutes, and Liverpool are in front.
Next came the European Cup and that Saint-Étienne match.
Keegan. Djokovic has missed it. Rushdown, brilliant save! Carries all through the challenge from Neil. This could be dangerous. 4 men forward supporting him. This is Rushdown, he's got a chance with his right foot. Brilliant save by Clements. Jean-Vion to Senegal. Bartonai. Bartonai shot swerved and goes in! Callaghan, Neil, and Toshek going after it. Kennedy, 2-2! And Fairclough is onside. This now could be interesting. Fairclough! Super sub strikes again!
David Fairclough's goal against Saint-Étienne, which won that quarter-final, is arguably the most treasured scored in front of the Kop. Here's Liverpool's eloquent supporter, Rogan Taylor.
I remember the Saint-Étienne night here, as of course everyone who was here does. It's one of the greatest nights that the Kop's ever seen. When it came to the third goal that night, the goal that was required to take us through to the semi-finals of the European Cup, I remember the moment that that goal was slipped in, instead of turning and doing what everyone else was doing, I just turned and watched. And it was like being in a living Hieronymus Bosch picture. Faces twisted and contorted. You couldn't tell whether it was agony or ecstasy, except because you knew it was ecstasy. But the whole picture was like a medieval vision of another world, a strange place inhabited by people of enormous passions. To be in the Kop is an experience of almost religious intensity. It's not just the physical intimacy of fellow worshippers shoulder to shoulder in the temple. It's also the mental, the psychological oneness. The people are concentrating on a particular object, a desired thing, a goal, a victory. And that brings them together, rather like religious experience does for groups of worshippers who are singing songs, jumping up and down. And so Saturday here is the holy day, and this is where the worshippers gather.
Strong stuff, but then it was a vintage year. Liverpool were chasing the treble. They won the championship, lost in the FA Cup final, and then the Kop moved camp to Rome for the European Cup final.
One time, like we were just before the Rome Cup final, we were coming back from Newcastle, and you know, we were coming on a train called a 6-5 special. We used to call it because it took, you know, it took 5 hours. But you know, 6:05, you got in 11:05. Anyway, we started on this song, like, you know, we're on our way to Roma, to the tune of Arrivederci Roma, you know, and as I say, the lads, like, you know, me and my mates, like, you know, once we got it going, like, we made the composer, like, you know, and we started singing it, like, and off it took. And all of a sudden, like, when we eventually got to Rome, you could hear it all right at the Liverpool end of the ground.
Plenty of players forward here, Liverpool. That's nice, that's McDermott, and that's a goal! Gone off. That's a mistake, and here's Simonsen. And that's it! Case and Keegan in the box. Kennedy, Smith, and Joey Jones outside.
Oh yes! And what a delighted scorer! It's Tommy Smith! Look at it again! Oh, what an end to a career! Tommy Smith sends the Liverpool crowd into total delight.
Keegan.
Foul, but he's going on! And what about his yes? It deserved it because it was such a good run. He left folks who bit at him, and bit too hard, and it's a penalty.
Neil against Knight.
And with such simplicity, the European Cup surely is won. Side foot, just inside the left-hand post from the kicker's viewpoint. And there it is. The smile of the season from Emlyn Hughes. The performance of the season. the trophy of the season, and won by the English champions, Liverpool.
Along with the 1965 FA Cup triumph, this was the ultimate experience for Liverpool supporters. To be crowned Kings of Europe, to win the Champions Cup again the following year, and then for a third time in 1981, this time with ex-Copite Phil Thompson as captain. But the following season, Liverpool unusually slipped into the bottom half of the table by Christmas. That Anfield sign seemed to be stimulating the opposition, and Bob Paisley went into print to warn the Kop against complacency.
I would just like to have a little bit more of that and real encouragement and that. And I think the players would respond more. It's all right saying that they get paid well enough, they should respond to anything. They're out there to do a job, but like every other job, if you get a little bit of encouragement, you'll perform that little bit better.
Paisley's words had the desired effect. Liverpool knew victory over Spurs would ensure the championship.
A packed house at Anfield. The Kop was full at 2 o'clock. And a fantastic reception from the Kop for Ray Clements. And he responds.
Spurs led 1-0 at half-time, but then Liverpool and the Kop got together.
In comes Lawrenson. Lee. Dalglish. Who's up there? Oh, Dalglish is through. Kenny Dalglish. Miller's header. It's going to come to Whelan. And Whelan makes it 3-1. That is the championship now.
And so it was again the following year, 1983. The Kop acknowledged Paisley's 5th title in 7 seasons, and he chose this moment to retire, the most successful manager in the history of the English game, with 20 trophies to his name, including 3 European Cups and 3 League Cups in succession. Liverpool kept the job in their famous boot room. Paisley's successor was Joe Fagan, who in his first season won a treble, League Cup and Liverpool's 4th European Cup. But a year later, tragedy struck at Liverpool's 5th European Cup final in Brussels. A wall collapsed in the Heysel Stadium after fighting between rival blocks of supporters. 39 people lost their lives in the crush. Their memory is perpetuated by a plaque inside Anfield and by a memorial in a garden in Turin. Joe Fagan resigned and was replaced by Kenny Dalglish, and in his first season as player-manager, he led Liverpool to the double.
Yes! The player-manager scores the goal that may edge Liverpool nearer to their 16th championship.
The cup final victory over Everton meant that Liverpool had broken new ground again.
Liverpool have won the double.
At the start of the 1987-88 season, the Kop was out of action. An old Victorian sewer underneath the famous terrace collapsed, and while repairs were carried out, Liverpool had to play their first 3 matches away from home. Those who waited were rewarded with another sparkling season. Liverpool strolled to the championship with arguably their finest attacking force, and one performance against Nottingham Forest rivalled anything the Kop had ever seen.
Houghton, Barnes, Houghton goes again, he's through. Ray Houghton. Oh, Beardsley. Corner, great stop by Steve Sutton. Mann and Speckman combining beautifully. McMahon's shot, Barnes. Hit the post. Beardsley, he seems to be able to find space and find Aldridge. And that is another superb Liverpool goal. Beardsley. And now he goes alone. Still Beardsley. Hit the bar. Barnes. Working it to Houghton, Aldridge, Gillespie! Barnes against Chettle. Oh, look at Barnes here. They're waiting for the pullback. Beardsley! Oh! A glorious goal again. Oh, well played, Spackman. And Beardsley. And Spackman. And Aldridge! It's 5!
But then, a year later, the Hillsborough tragedy engulfed Liverpool Football Club.
This became a shrine to Hillsborough, and as a direct result of Hillsborough, all the grounds in this country in the Premier League and the First Division will be all seated by 1994. So in those two ways, this terrace culture has influenced football in the most profound way. And I'll never forget one of the most moving moments in my life, I think, was not actually in the Kop, but at home on the Wednesday after the Hillsborough disaster. And Inter Milan were playing that night in the European Cup, must have been the semi-final. Before the game, the whole of the stadium sang, "You'll Never Walk Alone." And I thought myself that night, what an accolade to this place, to these people, to this club, that those people in Northern Italy should sing our hymn.
One mustn't forget the compassion that was showed by the Kop, by the members, to those 96 who died at the time. And I think in the joyous occasion that we should celebrate the Kop going. We should also always remember the people who did die. Many of them, okay, not all stood on the Kop, others other parts of the grounds, but I think the days that passed after Hillsborough, everything centred around the Kop, and I think it became a shrine to Liverpool FC, to those people who died. This place was full of scars, flags, flowers, the goal mouth and everything. And I think as things come about that day, I think Liverpool people came with the country because we'd all had our problems. I think that mustn't be forgotten in the times of passing for the Kop as it is today.
Liverpool's European exile ended in 1991. The Kop welcomed them back to the UEFA Cup and helped them turn round a 2-goal deficit.
And McManaman gets away, and was tripped, penalty. Mahe the challenge from behind. Mulby against Martini, and Liverpool lead. Cracking penalty. Curled right on top of the handbag in the corner of the net. Houghton, Mulby is square. And the return ball comes in for Houghton. And Marsh Scores! Mulvey, Walters! Scores!
Shades of Inter Milan and Saint-Etienne. The contribution of the Kop to that victory was warmly praised by manager Graham Souness. In 1994, the last season that Kopites could stand on their favoured patch, Liverpool staged another storming comeback. They were 3-0 down to Manchester United.
Dix. Ince with the tackle, away by Bruce. Clough trying his luck, yes! Amazing! Right for Rush, Bruce got a foot in. Came off Keane, this is Clough again! He's gone again! Hold the back pages! Liverpool are back in the races with a second goal from Nigel Clough. Here's Barnes, instant control. Crossed in by Fowler, the headers by Ince. Ruddock, nice touch too. Stick Björneby. Ruddock, yes! The Liverpool comeback is complete with 11 minutes to spare. Delight inside a rocking Anfield.
The final derby match in front of the Kop saw a stirring Liverpool comeback after Dave Watson had given Everton a first-half lead. Immediately from the restart, Liverpool equalised in double-quick time. Ian Rush, record goalscorer in Merseyside derbies, struck again. The winner followed a superb through pass from John Barnes. And Liverpool's latest Kop hero, teenager Robbie Fowler, finished off Everton. And so to April, and the last home match of the season. The programme called it the Kop's Last Stand. It was a flag day.
Ian Crook to take the kick. In early, there's the near post ball for Sutton. Goss, it's in! Jeremy Goss, who made a habit of that earlier in the season, has sent the Norwich supporters into a scarf-waving celebration on a day when it's really Liverpool who are stunned there on the Kop, who were expecting to be greeting the goals.
But a 1-0 defeat for Liverpool didn't dilute the atmosphere or spoil the mood. The fans stayed behind to savour their last hour on the Kop and to pay their respects to its place in their lives. For many, just to be there with their memories was the perfect way to say goodbye. And it was left to the players to have a last word for the fans on the Kop.